Welcome to Stuck in My Mind podcast, the show where we dive into the mind of a regular guy on his road to self-discovery. You'll hear everyday people just like you share the latest topics, personal stories, and things they've learned along the way. And now, please welcome your host, Wise.
And welcome to another episode. I am your host, Wize, and I have a very special guest. She's an emotional intelligent master trainer, a leadership career coach, an author, a speaker. Welcome to the show, Joie Seldon. Hey.
Hey. How are you?
I'm doing well. I am doing so well. How are you today?
I'm really good too. It's a good day.
Okay. So how do you go from being an acting and an improv coach to being a leadership career coach?
Well, it's a long story. I'll keep it brief. In my engagement in as an actor, I struggled a lot to succeed in my career, and I realized that there were things getting in my way that had nothing to do with talent or capabilities, that it was really about the internal stuff that was going on, my lack of confidence, my lack of self-esteem, and a lot of issues that had to do with how I grew up. And so at one point I had a moment where I was standing frozen in my bedroom wondering, what am I going to do? I was broke. Sometimes I would be so broke I didn't know what to do, and then I'd get a residual check or something like that for my acting. And so I was standing there thinking, I don't even know what next step to take. And I heard this voice in my head said that you are not meant to be miserable. And I went, oh, yeah, of course not. None of us are meant to be miserable. And in that moment, I made a vow to find out what the truth was about life. Why am I here? What's my purpose? Why are we all here? And it set me on a journey. And that journey accumulated over time. One of the key things was my ability to feel my emotions turned out to be a tremendous asset for me. So there's a lot involved in it, but I got to a point where I realized that my mission here is to not to be a movie star, a famous actor, but to actually teach people how to feel, how to cope with their emotions.
And that's something a lot of people don't really know how to do, is to deal with the emotions. And
Right.
because that's something that for a long time wasn't really something that was really now, with the way things are now, and the mental health aspect of it all, and all that, people are more focused on it now than they were in years past.
Yes.
And so for me, when I started on my podcast, my purpose was to, because when I first started, it wasn't a conversation podcast like it is now. It
Hmm.
was just more focused on current events and stuff. But then I didn't enjoy that. I enjoyed the conversation piece where I would be able to bring my audience some benefit, some
Hmm.
story that maybe the guest had something to share with them, and someone, you never know, someone might have to hear that story, or even having you on yourself where people can learn and get knowledge to help them grow as a person and as an individual.
Right.
That's the content that I wanted to create. That's the stuff I wanted to put out, because I felt that it was lacking. And
Mhm.
instead of putting all the negative content that they've been putting out for the last couple of years, I wanted to focus on something that was just much more positive.
Fantastic. That's great. It's one of the things I love about podcasts. People get drawn to what they want to hear, but they get surprised sometimes. Right? They get
I get
exposure.
surprised. I get surprised sometimes,
Yeah.
but from some of the great conversations that I have, that you just never know that it's going to happen. And I'm blessed to be able to find what I love to do, and just being able to sit here and talk to people. To me, I just enjoy it so much.
That's great. I enjoy talking to people too. It's one reason I really wanted to start being a guest on podcast, is to just have a conversation. So it wasn't a presentation or a speech, but just a conversation about to me, one of the most important topics that we have is our emotions. They impact every single choice and decision we make. They impact our relationships. They impact our ability to fulfill our dreams and ambitions. And yet most people are, what I've discovered in my own journey is that we simply aren't educated around them. We don't know. So I've spent more than 20 years really delving into emotions and diving deep, reading, studying, getting a master's degree in somatic psychology and all kinds of things so that I could understand them more. And I'm always fascinated by, I'm still learning, but they're so exciting. And we have so many myths and misunderstandings and attitudes about emotions, calling them negative. These are negative and these are positive. So who wants to feel a negative emotion? And all of that is just stuff that gets in our way.
So is there a real big difference between a negative emotion and a positive emotion? To me, it's still emotion. It's still
It's emotions. So
it's yeah.
to me, there are no negative emotions. Their emotions are bringing us information. They're basically an information system that happens in our body. So they're biological. They speak to us through body sensations. We have thoughts, and thoughts create emotions, but we're often kind of unconscious or unaware of how much we think and how much of our thinking is automatic and habitual. And so we have these sensations, and different emotions have different sensations. We know the difference between sadness and anger because we feel very differently when we experience those. And each primary or core emotion is bringing us a signature piece of information. And when we can accept that information, listen to it, realize what it's saying, then they're not negative. They're there for our survival, our well-being, to help us make good decisions and choices. I like to say that it's the suppression and repression and denial of emotions, or the being overwhelmed by them, that causes a negative consequence. It's not the emotion itself.
So if you're able to keep your emotions in check and not is it if, and not I guess let it overwhelm you and take control over you, it can even if it's
Difficult emotion,
yes, a difficult emotion,
right?
it can still be beneficial for you.
Absolutely. And absolutely. And it's about being able to be present. So some emotions, like the ones that are generally called negative, like fear and anger, shame, they are labeled negative and they feel uncomfortable in the body. They're not pleasant in the body, especially when we resist them. I mean, emotions are not meant to run the show. They're not meant to make your choices for you. And that's too often what happens when people are not present with their emotions and being willing to feel uncomfortable. And I mean, there are dysfunctional versions of each emotion, but mostly if we're present with them, they'll pass quickly. That sensation will come and go unless you're in an extreme survival situation where your life is being threatened. For example, fear and anger, which are the fight or flight emotions. If life is not threatened, then there are protector emotions. They're simply bringing us information. Fear's messages, pay attention. Something's happening that you need to pay attention. And it's our job as humans to realize that we have this power of consciousness, of awareness, that we can make a conscious choice. But we get caught up in the emotion and we respond automatically rather than taking the time to really pay attention to what's going on and recognize what we need to do to make a better choice for ourselves.
Yeah, because there are times where people make decisions, choices and stuff when they're angry and upset, and sometimes the
Yeah.
consequences from making that decision, it blows up in their face.
Yeah, and it causes a lot of suffering and damage and pain. Anger is a really big one that people misuse and misunderstand.
Excuse me.
Mhm.
So how can someone make use the emotions to work for them, to benefit them?
Well, the first step is to be aware, to be self-aware. It's self-awareness is the foundation for emotional intelligence, and this is where we develop a relationship with ourselves. With we everybody is powerful. I mean, we come from source, we come from some magnificent something, whatever you want to call it, that creates life, and we have that life source within us. And so emotions are actually this communication system that tells us what our relationship is to what's happening. It tells us what we're thinking, what attitudes and beliefs that we hold. So, for example, with anger, somebody says or does something, and you have this tension that happens, this spark of anger. And so instead of lashing out or shutting down, which are the two primary choices that happen, uh, if you just stay present with that and realize that anger's core function is to set boundaries. It's to protect us. So for me, when I get angry, I'm like, worry, what boundary am I trying to set here? Sometimes it is to another person to say, hey, you can't speak to me that way or treat me that way. This is not okay with me. you know, I don't like this. But sometimes my anger comes from my sense of powerlessness. I used to get really furious when I had technical problems with the computer. I mean, it was ridiculous. I would get so pissed off because something happened on the computer, and I realized it's because I felt powerless. And anger is it charges us up with energy, and it activates our muscles. And so I had this kind of false sense of power from the anger. And then I had to realize, oh, I need to just take a breath, recognize that this anger is telling me I feel powerless, and where can I get help? Where do what do I need to do? And I actually give my husband advice now with computer stuff because I've come such a long way to when I learn how to slow down. We don't slow down. Our culture is everything is moving so fast now that we need to take a breath. That thing, count to 10 when you're angry, that comes from a real wisdom that says you need to slow down and really think about what's actually happening.
And yeah, me. Okay, so I was widowed at 31, and I went through a lot of
Mm,
I went through a lot of stuff,
yeah,
and I was angry. I was
yeah.
angry with spirit, God, whatever you want to call it.
Mm,
And when I came to a realization that 'cause I was self medicating, drinking,
mhm.
I was just in a dark place, and it was because I was angry.
Sure.
And so when I finally one day I woke up and finally realized, like, this isn't it. I can't. I'm angry over something I had no control over.
Right.
All the things that had happened in my life, I had no control over. These are things that were meant to happen.
Mm,
This is what spirit wanted, and I didn't want to be angry anymore.
yeah.
And so I sought the help. I went to counseling.
Hmm.
I came to reality that I had no control over these things, and that I shouldn't be so angry. I was like, I'm the only person I'm really hurting is myself,
Right.
having all this anger and being upset and just hurting myself.
Hmm.
So when I that one day it was like, dude, you have to wake up. You can't be like this
Yeah.
anymore. You gotta let go. You have to let go of this anger. You can't be angry anymore.
Right.
And again, like I said, the moment I did that, it was like so uplifting,
Beautiful.
and it was just like I need to do this. I have to do it because I just couldn't be that way anymore. And so, and things have turned around.
Hmm.
I've remarried. I've been at my job now for the past 8 years. I've started my podcast. I've turned my life around.
Beautiful.
And to be able to do that and do what I'm doing now and be able to share my story with other people and be able to
Hmm.
and find my purpose and passion with doing my podcast. It all started once I decided to release that anger.
That's fantastic. And that's one thing that people don't realize is they have choice. We can't control our emotions. You can't stop it from starting, from sparking, but you can be, I like to use the word dominion. You can be in dominion. You can have agency over yourself and make choices, and you can shift your emotional experience in a heartbeat when you choose that. And it doesn't mean you're sacrificing anything, or it doesn't mean that your loss wasn't incredibly meaningful and impactful, but we all have trauma. We all have difficulties and challenges in life. We're in a culture where we worship um, movie stars and athletes, and these people who are celebrities, and when you look into their lives, they all have tragedy and traumas and difficulties. Being human is extremely messy.
No,
it's
it is.
difficult. It's
It's very
difficult.
difficult. You would think that, oh, look at their celebrities, they got this great job, they have all this
Yeah,
money and all this stuff,
money and
and yet look at a lot of these celebrities that have taken their lives.
yeah, and they have suffered losses and difficult relationships, and we have the opportunity, and this is what I think is exciting now, is that this idea which you mentioned earlier about mental health and wellness and emotions, the discussion is opening up with all of the, pardon my language, crap that's been going on the planet, all the violence and all of the uh, issues that people are getting really stuck in. We also have many people like yourself waking up, recognizing that we have a choice, and that we want to live a better life, and that there's so much that's available to us. So that's my mission with educating people around emotions, to recognize that these are an information system. They're there to serve us, not to cause problems. And we have the opportunity to learn about this magnificent experience of being human. As difficult as it is, it's still pretty freaking miraculous.
Oh, I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's like you said, it's crazy because when I speak to people and have these conversations, and at the core, yeah, we're all different and we're all unique, but at the core of it all, we all want the same thing. A lot of us want the same thing,
Yes.
and so to be so divided now, though, because of the way we are, at least here in this country, the way we're
Mhm.
divided now,
Right.
it's crazy because we all want the same things.
Yes.
But they have us under the illusion that, hey, you're red, you're blue, or you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, whatever it is.
It's beliefs, these
Eh,
beliefs.
and instead of realizing that, listen, we're all humans. A
Mhm.
lot of us want the same thing. A lot of us want to be successful. A lot of us want our families to be well and do well.
Right. Right.
We want to do well, and so, but for it, it doesn't benefit them because they can't control us that way.
Well,
They ha-
yes, people think they have to control, and that their way has to be the right way,
yeah,
rather than recognize. I mean, the thing that I discovered in my work that really was like, oh my gosh, is that our emotions is the thing that we share the most. When somebody else is
and that's what they
angry,
feed
I
on.
know
Yeah,
what anger is. I understand anger. Let's come together on our feelings rather than using them to divide us.
and that's
There's
what
a
they do.
lot of
They yeah,
fear. That's
they
People are driven by fear.
yes.
They're afraid to let go of control. When the truth is that letting go of control is where we have the greatest opportunities for fulfillment, for our creativity, for our intellect to expand and broaden and grow. And we can actually connect with other people through our shared emotional experiences, rather than causing that as a divide, using that as a way to divide.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I agree with you. I definitely agree with you with, and this and that's why I continue to do what I do because it's like I said, I didn't want to put out no negative content. I wanted to
Mhm.
focus more on positive energy
Right.
and focusing on bringing people positive content where it was helping people and not hindering them or hurting them.
Yes. Yes. We have a tremendous opportunity. I like to watch nature shows because when you look at nature shows, it's so miraculous. nature, and we have that same nature that creates this phenomenal variety of animals and plants and different life on the planet, is created us as well, and our different cultures is part of our diversity of nature that is makes it fun and exciting and beautiful and interesting. Instead of trying to make everybody the same, we thrive. In fact, in nature, if you have too many plantings that are of the same, exactly the same, there's more disease. If you have more diversity within agriculture, then you'll need less uh, poisons and things to kill insects and all that eat the plants. If you have a diversity of plants, then nature kind of takes care of itself. And so our diversity is what actually we can thrive in a better way when we really accept and enjoy each other's differences rather than want other to people to be the same.
Yeah, listen, I've come to realize, and that's another thing that is when you want people to conform to what to your opinion, and you just need to realize that, which is basically putting expectations on other people, like, and getting angry at them because they didn't live up to your expectations of them.
Exactly.
And so,
Exactly.
and that's one thing I've been learning not to do is put these expectations on people, and then not actually let them know that, hey, I expect this from you, but just put these expectations on these people, not let them know, and then get upset with them when they don't live up to it.
Right. Yes. That's very common, unfortunately. Yes, I learned a lot in my family growing up that I was being there was an expectation of my behavior, and I was kind of the oddball out in my family. I was the youngest of three kids, and I was the one who, in the end, I have a healthy marriage, and it took me a while to get there because I had a lot to learn. I was 45 when I got married, and because I realized that I didn't want to repeat my parents' marriage. I didn't want to have the kind of life that I saw around me. And they weren't overtly abusive. I mean, I wasn't beat up, or they weren't alcoholics or anything that so many people have to deal with. But there was narcissism and emotional abuse, I would say, and ways that were expected me to live. And I just shut down. I thought I was a total introvert. And growing up, became very quiet, but I left home as soon as I could when I was 18. And I just had some kind of determination in me that I was going to seek my own life. And I did. And it was a long haul, a lot to learn, but I'll tell you, it was worth every minute of it because I
Yeah.
have a lot of fun now.
Oh no, people, because people even tell me, do you regret everything that happened to you, or all the tragedy? And I'm like, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I wouldn't wish it
Mhm.
upon anyone.
Right.
But no, I don't regret. I don't. I'm not regretting that it happened to me, because
Mhm.
it made me who I am today.
Right.
It helped transform and build me into the person that I am sitting here. And
Right.
so, if any of that stuff had not happened, then I wouldn't be the person that I am today. And I love myself. I love the person that I am
Yay.
becoming. I love the person that I'm becoming. I love the people that I'm attracting into my life, the people that are surrounding themselves with me, and the people who want
Mhm.
to actually be associate with me and be around me. And so, no, and they were shocked by the answer, because they would think, oh no, you would want to take all that back, but the person that you see here now wouldn't be here.
Right. I share a very similar experience that when I look back, it's like all of those things, all of that loneliness I felt. For me, it was very lonely growing up, and um, all of the things that came out of a lot of issues that I had. I mean, I'm a cancer survivor. I've had a lot of issues that I had to deal with. but I've dealt with them in a way that makes me who I am today, and it gives me the strength. I'm a very strong person now, and I have a sense of um, what I call healthy detachment that I'm able to experience, so that so that I don't get too caught up in things that I know don't serve me. And I also love myself. And that took a long time to get to that point, to even be able to acknowledge it, let alone say it.
Yeah.
But if we don't love ourselves, how can we really love others? You know, the more we love ourselves, the more we can actually love other people, and love other people who we may not even like, but we can respect them or see the humanity of them or have compassion for them. So I think that it behooves us to practice the things that can bring us closer to our core and our strength and what we can do, because everybody's going to have hard times at some point. So I love what you did. That's beautiful.
Listen, everyone. I have my issue. I've had my issues. I've had my story. I have my story,
Yeah,
and my story isn't greater than anyone else's, but it's my story,
right,
and I don't diminish anyone else's story because it's their story. It's the me. It's them. It's what helped mold them. So I don't really knock anyone's story because again, that's their story.
right.
So to be able to realize that I I've for many years you've let your emotions and other things dictate your life,
Hmm.
and but now being able to keep them in check, and especially with everything that I've been through with all the loneliness, the anger and all that,
Hmm.
to really be able to release that and let that go, and start truly being yourself, start truly being who you are meant to be, and not let these things keep you in check, and not let all these emotions and all these tragedies and everything that's happened in life keep you chained down and stuck.
Right. You do have choice. You do have choice. Everyone has choice, and that's we have that power. And it's the acceptance is the first step in being able to access the choice. You can't change what your experience has been, but you know, just what you're saying. One of the things that I found fascinating with that I learned about anger, because it is such a big one, it's really a boundary setter. When your life is not threatened, its function is to set a boundary. But boundaries are not just to keep negativity out or things out of your space. Boundaries create space in which you can function and you can access your higher resources, your highest intelligence, your highest creativity. Everybody, whether, you know, whatever it is that you choose to do in life, has a way of being creative um, that can be fulfilling in any role that you have in life. And so when you can learn how to say, oh, well, I'm angry, what is it that I want to set a boundary against? Sometimes that boundary is against our own thinking, our own beliefs that we get positioned in, the victim, or I'm, you know, oh, I have no power. When I woke up to the fact that I didn't have to be a victim of my circumstances.
And that's what to me a lot of people, they use past traumas and tragedies to excuse what's going on now.
Yeah. Hmm.
They use those things like, oh, my parents beat me and that's why I am now, and it's their fault, my life is horrible now.
Hmm.
And that's where we make that mistake, is where we dwell on those past mistakes, past traumas and
Yeah.
past they, and just use that as a crutch to
Right.
to 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 having a excuse and a reason for why our lives are not doing well, for why our lives are spiraling.
Yes.
And so again, when for me, when I decided to finally stop being self-destructive and decided to take control of my life, and decide that I'm no longer going to let things that I have no control over dictate my life.
Hmm.
Again, it was just like an open. It was just like there's a light beam through
Sounds
and
like
it's like,
freedom.
yeah.
Sounds like freedom. Yeah. Well, one of my revelations had to do with anger because I realized that I used my anger in a positive way by saying, I don't want to be stuck in this place. I don't want to be a victim. I don't want to be powerless, and I don't want to be stuck in some place of misery. And I would there's been times in my life where I've really been down. I mean, I've like gone down into the bottom of the well. And I remember one day I was driving and I thought I got to get off the road because I feel like I was going to crash because I was so depressed. I was so despondent. And I pulled off the side of the road and I'm just sitting there. And I had done a lot of work at that point. I'd been involved in metaphysics and my spiritual journey. And I just said, okay, I'm going to surrender to this black hole. I'm just going to surrender. And as soon as I did, I felt this wave of energy come through me. And I felt this relief, this release of all of this stuff that I've been holding on, of me, poor me, and I can't have a relationship that works, and I can't make any money, and I'm not very successful, and all my yada yada that was going in my head. And I just said, I'm going to surrender to all that. And it just like the light comes through, the clouds parted, and
Yeah.
about I don't know, less than 5 minutes, I was on, oh, well, what am I going to do? Should I go to dinner? Should I go see a movie? Let me go see, I just suddenly had all of these ideas flooding in. And it was not long after that I met the man who became my husband.
And that's his. Well, it was like like you said, the clouds opened up and light beamed through. So you was now it was time for you to start receiving
Yeah.
that energy you was putting out, like that you knew like I no longer want to be this in this dark hole.
Right.
I need to open myself up
Yeah.
and the same thing for me is when I've decided to stop being angry and stop letting this control me is when I met my wife. It's
Mm,
when she came into my life and
aha.
she's been a big part in what I'm doing now because she's very supportive. She sees that I love podcasting. She sees that I'm very well at it. She's
Hmm.
like, what can I do to help you to make this a reality? What can I do to make this something that you're successful at, something that can benefit us in the long
Hmm.
haul?
Beautiful.
And so to have and she's like, okay, let's start an LLC, let's do this, let's do that. And she's been very supportive. She's been like my
Hmm.
number one, even though she doesn't listen to the podcast, she is my number one fan.
My husband is my number one supporter and champion. He's my champion, and but he doesn't listen to all of my interviews either or my presentations. It's okay.
She looks at, listen, I speak to you at home, I hear you enough. I don't need to listen to you at
Yeah,
work or on the car or anywhere
yeah.
else. I know what you sound like, buddy.
She's supporting you in the way that it
Yeah.
matters most,
No,
right?
yes, yes, she is. She's and she'll wear my merch, she'll wear my t-shirts. So she's supportive. Like I said, she's my
Yeah.
number one fan. But she'll tell you, she'll be the first one to tell you, no, I have not heard not one single episode. I do not need to hear him. I love him and everything. I know what he sounds like. I'm good. And I gotta laugh. I laugh and I joke about it on the show all the time.
Yeah.
But again, it's like I'm blessed to have her.
Mm,
The only reason it happened is because I switched. I decided to no
right.
longer be that person and become the person that I am now.
Yeah, beautiful. It's a powerful story. Very powerful.
It's funny because I've been wanting to write a book, and I'm gonna write a book on podcasting,
Mhm.
and I went down to Podfest in May, and when I went down there, I met a gentleman. His name is Aaron Walker. I actually recently interviewed him for my podcast, and he's a great dude. And when we started talking, I told him about my story. I told him everything that happened, and he was like, yeah, forget about writing a book on podcasting. Everybody's done that. Everybody's doing it.
Mhm.
If you're gonna write a book, you need to write a book on your story. You need to write about your experience because you have
Mm.
a powerful story to share with people.
Right,
You
right.
have something that people need to hear. Everybody, like you said, everybody's doing a book on podcasting, but
Mhm.
everyone has has gone through situations like yours and don't know how to get out of it.
Right.
And that is way more is much more bigger than, oh, how do you start a podcast? And I'm not knocking anyone who writes a book on that. That's
Right. No,
but
it's useful,
from
it's helpful, but
yes,
this is
but for
this is
me,
what makes
yeah,
you really unique and special. And that's how I wrote my book. I thought, I can't, if I die and I don't write my book and share this information that I've spent years and years and years accumulating, and it comes from my personal experience, my own journey, my education, my experience with clients. And my husband actually was my copy editor on the book. He's very good with words. He's a grammarian, so he's very helpful in that way. But I just made this commitment. I have to write this book, and I did. It was very, very fulfilling. Sorry.
what is the title of you? That's actually, is that the book in the back?
Yes, it's called Emotions and Owner's Manual.
Ooh, cool title.
Yes, and it's educational. There's exercises in it. It's a workbook in a way. It's a way for people to really process out old, long held, because we have all these emotions that we carry with us for years and years and years. So there are exercises in there to release that in a really safe and healthy way. There are guided visualizations. There are exercises and information on how to communicate in present time. When my husband and I got married, it was given advice was given to me to have a talk time, and so for about the first 3 or 4 years, once a week we had talk time where we'd sit down, and sometimes it'd be very, very scary to tell the truth, but our commitment to each other was to always communicate the truth and to do it respectfully, and so that we would speak our truth. And over time, it got to be more and more fun to do that. And we learned to trust each other because we knew that nobody was withholding anything, and we didn't have that. We had, and we still have moments where we just get,
Yeah, I believe
with
I
each
know. I
other.
Is there sometimes
We
I
still
mean,
have our stuff to deal with.
sometimes yeah. No,
we,
listen, it's
we have
because yeah.
certain
Well,
habits of.
we're never gonna always believe me. Me and my wife. There's times my wife, I'm sure she wants to kill me. But
Yeah, I get really annoyed, as a polite way to say it. But the thing is, we don't hang on to it, and if we
no,
really need to talk some, we talk some more. Communication is so important, and that's what's lacking in at businesses. So many people that I coach in the business world, they are so frustrated and upset because they have a manager or a coworker who's treating them badly or doesn't communicate well, and they don't know how to communicate. So part of what I really love is to help people first be able to be in dominion of their own emotional charges, their own emotions, and then be able to communicate with other people in a way that actually gets heard, so they don't put the other person on the defensive. So many people, I say, well, I don't want to be confrontational. You don't have to be confrontational. Communication does not mean being confrontational. But there's this myth that if I'm going to speak up, especially if I have anger, if I have some strong feelings, that I have to be confrontational. And that's not true at all. You can communicate with people in ways that actually help them to feel seen and heard, so that then you can find where that place is. And I've had clients that had tremendous success and changes in their relationships with managers, bosses, colleagues, employees at work, because they learned how to be in dominion of their own emotions without trying to suppress them or change them necessarily, and then communicate and to listen. And then that changes the relationship. So that's it's I think my marriage has been actually one of my great teachers. And my husband has a great sense of humor, which has been really good for me because I was a very serious person for a long time.
but Joy, this has been great talking to you. I've had a blast. This has been. I love the energy that you have. I love the fact that this just being able to have this conversation has give boosted my energy up today. Thank you very much. I
Oh,
needed that.
great. Thank you. I've
And
enjoyed it too.
but now is time where you get to plug away. You get to tell them where you can
Oh,
find your book,
all
your
right.
website, everything.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, the book is on Amazon. It's in print, Kindle, or audible.com. So you get your choices there, and it's the kind of book that people say, oh yeah, I come back to it from time to time. Oh, it's like, oh, something came up with my coworker and I came back to the section on anger, and there's a section on grief, sadness, there's a section on joy, section on fear, so that you can actually really understand what these emotions are all about. And so that's the book. And my website is my name, and it's it's joieseldon.com, and it's spelled Joie, as in joie de vivre. So it's JOIESELDON.com. And there's a free giveaway there on how to have and prepare for a difficult conversation. So, and that comes along with a little audio guided visualization that helps people to create energetic boundaries and create safety in their relationships. So I invite you to, if you're curious, if you're struggling, if you have people in your life that you just don't know how to talk with. I had a client who was an HR professional, and she took my course. I have a course, Emotions at Work, because it's not for her work, but because her mother-in-law was driving her crazy. She wanted to know how to deal with her. So, it's for personal work, what have you. I invite you to check it out. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I've really had a good time.
Oh, no, thank you for being, but don't leave just yet.
Right.
We're going to chat a little bit off air. But now it is time for shout outs. Big shout out to the Real Wise fam, Brandy J, Poppy J. Love you guys. Big shout out to the boss lady, Fina. Love you and appreciate you, baby. Big shout out to our guest, Joie Seldon, for coming through and sharing her story and sharing her great energy. This was great. And as always, a big shout out to all the essential workers out there. God bless y'all. Be safe. You know how your boy Wise does it. Peace out.
Thanks for listening. Listen on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, and TuneIn. Find us on social media on Twitter at wise_B_blunt, Instagram at wise_B_blunt, and a Facebook fan page, www.facebook.com/wise76. Check back soon for new episodes. Until next time, peace out.